The topic today is Apsidious, hype or hope. So I think in a lot of places we do hear that one way to improve the startup time and running time and memory of your application is to use Apsidious. It's a feature which has been there since a long time, but has only recently started being more available for developers and in general applications. We've heard a lot about it, but how does it actually is it actually practical? Can we use it in a practical case, etc.? So these are some of the thoughts that I've had in my project where we run on the cloud. And one thing that I am concerned about is performance, especially in a cloud environment, how fast you can start up your services, etc. So that's how I started investigating into Apsidious. So I read a few blogs, I got some understanding, I tried out a few things. And what I'm presenting here is what it is my trial and errors that I've had. Okay, so let's get into it. So what is class data sharing? So like I said, class data sharing was a feature which was introduced way back in 1.5, Java 1.5. It was intended to reduce the startup times and reduce your memory footprint. And the simple idea is that when your JVM process starts, it loads a lot of classes into memory and uses it for whenever it is required, right? So when your application runs, it's sort of lazy loading, but it loads a lot of classes. And if you could reuse those set of classes over and over again, that reduces. So you have this stored in a common location, and for every new JVM process that spins up, you use this again and again. That improves your startup time, and that also improves your memory usage. You just have to go to one single memory location to access it. And then that's the simple idea of CDS. So you store commonly used classes in a shared archive. During your invocation, you memory map to that shared archive, and then every additional JVM reuses that same memory file. And it was initially only for mainly for the classes in Bootstrap. And here's a link to that particular documentation. So if you have any questions, stop me at any time, and we just go ahead with the question. So what is a memory map file?
Maybe just for beginners. So can you tell me about when you say class data, what are the data that a class data file will consist?
Yeah, so essentially all of the class bytecodes. I think it also loads, it does. So when your application starts, it does a lot of the linking to your system. So all of those details, those are the ones that get loaded into this shared archive. So so every additional or every new run that happens, you don't have to spend that amount of time searching through your class path to find that class, to load it, to link it to your system, etc. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes.
Right. So just around about what is a map file. So memory map is a sort of technique that is used to reduce the sort of memory usages. So in some instance, I think even Java supports using memory mapped locations to do communication between inter-process communication, right? And here the idea is one JVM, the first JVM that starts loads up your class archive, right? Now it does it in a way that it's mapped to a memory location. So what is a virtual? So here you'll see that the definition of memory map file, segment of virtual memory that has been assigned a direct byte for byte correlation for some portion of a file or other file-like processes. So it could be a socket, it could be a location in memory, and in this case, it's a file. So when you say virtual memory, it's not actually your RAM, right? It's just an abstraction of your RAM. It may map into the RAM, but it could also map into a hard disk, or it can map into some other sort of storage. It could be network storage. It sort of abstracts out the idea of memory, and it just gives one clean interface for every process you access the virtual memory, not the actual memory, right? So you can easily map it between different sorts of memories. So in case of memory map files, the virtual memory is backed by the file in your disk. So first you have to create an archive. That archive is then memory mapped for each of the processes, and every other process can then just access that part of the memory. Is this clear? Any what are
This is good, Varghese. Everything clear.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the point I was trying to make was it's not exactly RAM, but it is RAM-like in some way. Okay. Right. So like I said, it was in 1.5, and from Java 10, we have JEP 3.10, which actually brings in the application class data sharing. So extending the CDS to allow for other class loaders to also archive and then reuse the class files. So the steps. So if you go through the JEP, the link is here. It gives you the steps that are needed. So you first have to create a list of all of the classes your JVM is going to use. Using that list, you create an archive. So here you see you're dumping with a shared list, and this is the archive location. So yeah, so here this is where you first create the list, hello.list. You then use that list here to create an archive, and then you use the archive for running your process. So this is where application JEP 3.10 in JDK 10 is when the application CDS comes alive. And it got further extended in JDK 12 with JEP 3.41, where the JDK now automatically an archive at the build process. So after your JDK build is over, it then creates the archive and stores it in a particular location. So that's lib/server. And finally, JDK 13, we get JEP 3.50, which is a dynamic CDS archive. This allows for dynamic archiving of classes at the end of a Java application. So any classes that were loaded during your Java execution, that at the exit of your process is written into an archive file. So this essentially combines the first. So in the previous 3.10, you had two steps here, which essentially helps you create the archive, and JEP 3.50 has essentially brought them into one. So there has been these improvements through these JEPs for the class data sharing, so that it is reduced number of steps. So now you just have one flag which does it at exit, and you use the file in the subsequent run. So again, link to JEP 3.50 is here. Okay, so enough talk. Let's take it. Let's do a demo. Any questions till now? Please go ahead and ask. Okay, I'll first walk you through the application. So I've tried to. So one factor which I've tried to bring in is to make it as real life as possible, to see if does it actually live up to the hope, right? So in this case, I've written a simple application. It's a simple Spring Boot application. Spring Boot because that's the main framework everyone uses. So the Spring Boot application, basically, it's backed by a database. So I have this database here, which is essentially right. So this is backed by a MySQL database. MySQL provides a sample database called WorldDB, where it gives certain details about countries, capital, population, etc. So essentially, this is the data that we are serving out in the application. And I have just a simple entity, a controller, which just randomly fetches one of the cities as a JSON. Yeah, that's basically the whole idea. Like it just fetches one of the rows on randomly, right? what I've also done is after I load the application, I have an extra condition here. If we pass in a parameter called exit, it will close the context and bring down the application. So we can use this to actually build the archive. Okay, I will run this to show you the output. Okay, so that is up. I go to right. So this is the raw data that we get. It's just one of the rows that we have, and you can just refresh and you get different column, different other rows from the database. So this is the application I've built, and now this is just meant as for the demo. This is not any, there's nothing fancy in the code to show here. But what I will do now is try to run it from the command line and try to show you how the timelines, how it improves when for each and every subsequent runs of the using class CDS, using application sheets. Okay. And I just want to remove. Okay, so these were from my previous runs. Okay. Okay. So I have the latest Java version, JDK 18. So what I'm also thinking of is I've got other JDKs installed, and we can try with different JDKs to see how to see if there are different, right? So first build the application. Okay, so there is a test. There is a simple it seems to run fine. So now application is built, and you should see the Spring repackaging. So you have here, which does not have one, and you have another dependencies. So I just so you have the whole list of Spring Boot and other dependencies that come as part of the Spring repackaging. So now let's do a run of the application. Okay. Oops, I forgot to set the variable. Sorry about that. Okay, so the application has run, and it's run in about took about 3.97 seconds, right? So what we can do here is we can try and see how much of the classes were loaded from the archive, right? So we're going to add some more extra logging. Okay, this particular feature is the unified logging, which has been introduced in Java. So you can use this feature to log various metrics of the JVM process. So GC, etc., etc. So in this particular case, I'm trying to see what are the classes that get loaded and what are the locations that it gets loaded from. Okay. So you will see that with the extra logging, it adds a few seconds to the application run. Now, if I do, right. Here you see this is the log of when each of the classes were loaded into the application. And you'll see that there are a lot of there are a lot of places where the classes have been loaded from the shared archive, right? So you'll see there are a lot of shared objects. Not sure if, yeah, you'll see others where it mentions the source. So here you have the source is shared objects file, and here you have sources so and so. This is coming from our application jar, right? So how many classes were loaded in a normal run? So there's about 11,500 classes which get loaded in a normal run, and of those, how much are from the shared archive? So that's just about 1,200 classes which got loaded from the shared archive. Everything else was loaded from the jar files, from the class path essentially. So now let's do the let's create the archive and let's see if that improves the application runtime, right? So I'll also add the logging. And I'll also add some more other logging also so that I can explain on the way. Yes. Minus charge target. And I'll add my command exit so that it loads and then immediately exits and creates the archive. I did create it, but not it's not exactly correct. Give me a second. Okay. Right. So I will try to show. Right. So this is the run. This time it ran in about 4.9 seconds. And it, so after it loaded, it exited immediately. And it has created the, so we've got the app cds.jsa, that's the shared class archive. We've got the other logs, so I can show you what those are. Right. So this class path is showing us where the path of the, so there are two paths now. So the one is the shared archive which has been created where JDK was built, and that's at this particular location. So I use SDKman to get my Java candidates, and I'm right now on 18. And this is the location of that shared archive. And it's, yeah, so it does that. And then the other class path is snapshot.jar. That's essentially what I wanted to show with this class path logs, essentially a location of where that is. So we can try to see if that file. To change the path. So don't judge me for using Windows. I am more of a Linux person, but my wife needs a laptop as well. Right, so that is essentially the archive from the JDK. Now let's take a look at the class path. So this was this is the class path. Let's look at the class loading. WC-L. Again, this has now got 11,698. Do a grep of shared. Yeah. Again, just under 1,200 files, which have been loaded from the class archive. But this time we have got the archive created as well. Let's just look at what is CDS.log. So when your archive gets created, the JVM also outputs these logs where it tries to see if it is able to fetch the files from whether it is able to write those files into your archive, right? And there are many reasons why some of the files get rejected. So one of the reasons is that the code version is behind, is actually before JDK 5. So that's one of the reasons why it is not archived. The other reasons are some anonymous classes which do not get archived as well for obvious reasons, and also your stream-based classes, those sort of files also do not get put into the archive. Okay, so you'll see that there are certain classes and certain reasons. I'm not exactly sure of all of these, but essentially what this file says is certain classes were found, but they could not be added to the archive. Vaibhav, maybe can you give us some more thoughts about what these are, Vaibhav or anyone else?
First of all, I think what you are showing is perfectly fine, and this is what it is. And going to the theoretical part, there are a lot of theories to cover, but technically, we have also did benchmarking with a lot of stuff like WebLogic server and all our internal tools, right? So I think CDS combining with App CDS almost give an impact of 30% of the startup time. So that's one of the thing we have seen, and good amount of memory footprint we save, because generally if we run in the multi-tenant system, so things works much better actually.
Yeah.
Okay. And slowly we moved a lot of things actually into the CDS. So generally you remember in the starting time, it was like bootstrap class loaders, right? All the trusted class. Right. And we started moving string pools, and then dynamic archive came. So it is becoming better day by day. And that's the reason that now it is the default in JDK. So, I mean, people who have not seen it, if they run Java minus version, they can see it, the options sharing in the end. So even you can see it if you have the JDK. So in the Java version only, it will show you that sharing, you can see, right? Mixed mode and sharing, right? So, if sharing is coming, means archival is true by default.
Yes, true.
So I completely agree with all your findings actually, and frankly speaking, a lot of big applications have started using CDS and App CDS in the recent days.
Okay. Okay.
What about just curiosity? I don't know how it works, but if I'm loading the class dynamically, something like in Spring Boot, there is something called lazy loading. It will load the beans only upon the first request. So how will that be covered? So is it a good idea to start the application and take the JSA, or run the application for some time, like in pre-prod or whatever it is, and collect the JSA from there?
So I've put some thought into this, and so the articles that I've read does say this, right? You start your application and you do some of the actions, and you get more and more classes that are loaded into the archive, right? And for each of those, that improves the performance of those. So you don't have to go find the class in the class path. You don't have to do the linking and other processes. So that cuts down on the time that is required for that. So yes, it does improve the time. Again, it depends on what your use cases are, right? So in my case, I was trying to improve startup time. So in the startup time, is it really necessary to run all of your hit all of your endpoints with the test case and then generate the archive? To me, that felt like no. If I'm looking at startup time, I just need to start up my application and get those classes loaded and then dump them into an archive. And that should improve my startup related performance. But yes, you could put it in a test, run through all of your endpoints and then generate the archive. And that should slightly improve the performance of your application in general. So Satish, to answer your question, yes, you could do it, but in this particular case where I'm trying to improve startup time, it doesn't make a difference. You're not hitting any of those endpoints, so it shouldn't matter.
Yes.
Okay, so going back, do let me know if something going, if you think that this is not in the right direction.
Vargas, I have one query. Maybe it's wrong. Just I want to know about. See, take an example. I am writing a Java program. I am compiling. I am running. At the time, if I am giving that argument, what is app CDS? It will create archive, right?
No, it doesn't happen at compile time. It happens at runtime. So the archive is only created. So the archive is basically a dump of the classes that were loaded.
Okay.
So when your application comes up, it lazily loads those classes on demand. And after that, it dumps it into the archive.
Okay, I mean to say that at the runtime, jar I will give. After that comments whatever maybe I will give, and I will run the application. Then even though if it is a lazy loading at the rate of lazy equal to true, sometimes it will hit, right? At the time it will take that classes also, right?
Yeah, so it will pick the class directly from the archive. So the archive is sort of an indexed file which has all of these readily available.
Yes.
So the performance that you have to compare against is going through the class path, going to each and every jar file in that class path until you find the class, right? Versus an indexed file where you get it almost immediately.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
No, my question is like once we are running, okay, now archive is created using with the arguments, archive is created. My Spring application, I make it as a lazy equal to true. Yes. Whenever my request hits that lazy equal to true, that time what will happen? My request will create. Yes. And objects will be created. At the time, already my command is there, it's running. So obviously classes will be added and performance will be increased, right?
Yes, definitely. So you're saying
that is what.
Yeah. So yeah, if you have it, so then in that scenario, it does make sense, right? Where you put your Spring application loading lazy equal to true. And in that scenario, you may want to run your other test cases, hit all your endpoints, make sure all of those classes are also archived into your class. So that would, yes, in that scenario, you might get a better performance if you do it that way.
It will automatically do it, right? We no need to specify the classes. App CDS.
Yes, it will, but the point is your classes should get loaded, right? So at maybe just at startup, all your classes have not been loaded because your endpoints have not been accessed. You've
Yes,
not
yes.
hit, you may not have hit the database. So that's the reason why they say try a few of your endpoints and then exit, and that should give you a proper dump.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
So dump gets created only on exit.
only on exit.
Okay.
So I'm trying to recall what was the reason for that. So I think what they're trying to do is that when you run your application, it's only at that point you know what are the classes that have been loaded, right? And only then it makes sense to create the archive. Before that, during compile time, it's hard to know which all classes are going to be used.
What about in case of abnormal exit, like out of memory or something like that? Will it create in that
I
case?
think out of memory, if there are errors, it doesn't create the archive. It has to be a graceful shutdown. Only then the archive is created.
Okay. So I was thinking more from our container environment point of view, right? That because if a container dies and we want the next container to come up immediately, right, to serve a request. So if it has died due to some error and we want to load the next container fast, right? So will that be useful in that scenario?
So I've been putting a lot of thought into how we can bring this into a container world. But just going back a little, if you look at the JEP 310, it says that the main reason is to improve your startup time and reduce your memory usage, right? So the most effective way for that to happen is most probably on a physical server rather than a cloud infrastructure, right? So let's say you still have applications running on physical servers, and let's say you have more than one JVM process running on that server. So an example would be maybe you run many instances of Tomcat, right? So in that case, you have one process which loads all the classes and puts up all the classes in a shared location. The next process which starts uses that same memory location to do the startup. So it becomes faster for subsequent processes, but not for the first process. So the main advantage of CDS, App CDS was in the physical, when you have physical or virtual classes, how can you improve the performance there? In a cloud infrastructure, the problem is you don't know exactly on which node your application is going to start, right? You would prefer not to have it start on the same node, but on different nodes. So in that particular scenario, you may not get the benefits of App CDS because you don't know exactly in which node your application is going to start running. What you can get improvement is obviously startup times. So let's say in Lambdas and all where you need improved startup time, you can use your class archive to reduce the amount of time it takes to start. There are some points which I want to open up for discussion at the end where I don't have the answers. And one of this is definitely how can we use App CDS in a cloud related infrastructure? Can you sort of map it in such a way that other processes can use it? I'm not sure of the answers there, right? Right. So we have created the log file. We've created the archive, and now we're going to start the process with that. Okay, I'm going to leave the same. Okay, I don't need all of these. I can remove class path. Remove the CDS logs. So these were just meant to show a certain aspect of App CDS. Okay. So it took about 3 seconds to load now. So now let's take a look at the class load log. Right, it's got 11,352 classes. So yeah, so we see that about 9,467 classes came out of the archive, right? And the remaining were from the normal locations. So this is a market improvement over the actual, the previous loads. Right, okay. So, so this is one way of running it, but there is, I'm not sure whether there have been improvements, but in the older JVMs, the older JDKs, you have the restriction where in a fat jar, it is hard to get all of the classes that are loaded. It doesn't go deeper into the structure, rather it stays at the top level. But what you need to do in those cases, you need to break up your jar. You need to and then this is what Spring also recommend that you do when you run it in a container environment. You extract your jar and you either use a jar launcher or you use the jars directly to start your classes, and that should see a better improvement in your processes, right? So I can just show how that is done as well. So I'm going to make a CDS folder. I'm going to copy this file into the CDS folder. Okay. So yeah, so Spring's recommended approach is we extract this out and then we run the jar launcher. So jar Java. What is Spring framework? So let's have a look commands here. Okay, done. Yeah. So this is how they recommend we do the start for containers. Either this approach or we use the other. So do I have that on my slide? So that this is a link for that. Where, yeah, where you see that you unpack it and then run with the jar launcher. Slightly faster way to start it up is extract it and use the classes and the lib folder format to actually do the start. So I'll do the archiving from here again and try to show the performance. Okay. Okay, so here extracting the jar files. that. Okay, so that's the recommended approaches. Now I've shown how the AppSerious works. I just tried to show the difference in startup times when we use the AppSerious and when we don't use it. So this is the real intent of this whole this test. So this took about 3.659 seconds, and with the shared archive should be better. Yeah. So it took about 2.93 seconds. If you do it with the boot with all of the jar files in the classes, in the class path, there is an even more marked improvement. So I've also recorded one set of runs with for different setups, right? So I've just put few runs and did an average of it. So here I did without AppSerious on a Spring Boot fat jar. So the startup times were around so much, and the average was about 4 seconds of startup. When I did it again with AppSerious and a Spring Boot fat jar. So this was without AppSerious. Now this is with AppSerious. Got a market improvement of, this comes to around 20% improvement here. When I extract my jars and run it using the jar launcher, I see an even better, almost 30% improvement on my startup time. So I think there's one more. There's one more way that you can improve this, and I'm just going to switch over to. So I've been running on this. What's that? Git bash for now, because it's on the Linux side, and I wanted to show certain features. I just wanted to show the last part where we run it with all of the jars, and what is the speed improvement that we get there. So now I am on. Okay, I'm just going to just get out of. Right. So now I'm going to. What is it? I'm just going to create my package all over again. Okay, it's created. Okay, it's created my created the jar file there. So now if I do here, it took 4 seconds. So now if I go to my target folder, okay, so now I'm going to now I'm going to put my class path. Yes. Okay. So this has created my archive. Okay. Share. Yeah. So earlier you would have seen this took about 4 seconds, and now with this approach, I've cut it down to about 2 seconds to start. So nearly 50 is achievable when we use the app. That's all that I was planning to present. So I'm open for questions, feedback, questions.
Very interesting one, but we need to practice it. The actual measurement will vary according to application and application. So it would be better if everybody practice and then give their feedback.
Yeah, so some things to notice here, I'm running the database on my machine itself. So you don't have that. You're going to have a little more latency when you connect to a network database and a cloud database and others. So do other stuff as well, right? You might use Kerberos, you might use some other network connections, and that's also going to increase your time, right? But to improve which your classes get loaded, and it's now going to be the delays are now going to be due to the network and not on your applications.
Yes, that's a very good sharing, Varghese. So the only thing is that people who are more into the container environment, I think AppCDS has taken a very good trend because of that. So people who are into the container environment, they should definitely go and try using CDS or AppCDS. And there are many documents available actually on the internet. There is a twist at the places where if the class will be loaded from a custom class loader, right? So that is one of the twists in the AppCDS. So, you know, this generally, maybe Varghese will be knowing it. So this all works with something called class fingerprint matching algorithm. So we see that if the fingerprint will not match for the two class, actually, it will not take it from the archive and it will go to your normal class loading way to take the class. Okay. Still, it is possible to change the archive for a custom class loader file only if it is going from what is the method called? I think define class, right? Into custom class loader. What method we write? Yeah, define class. Mm-hmm. So if the method is coming, if the class loading is coming from the define class, it has the capacity to even change the archive. Okay. So overall, I can tell you from the internal side that I have seen like enormous amount of bug fixes have been done on CDS and AppCDS, and the performance wise, mostly I have seen like none of the people have said that it is giving less than 15 to 20% of the performance. So definitely there is a very high impact onto the performance and high impact on the startup time also. I mean, in the memory footprint and the startup time. right? So worth to try for all the people who are working onto the cloud and container. What do you suggest, Varghese?
Yeah, I would suggest definitely we should be using it. And that's where some of the, like, I've been thinking about how I can use it in my application. And some of the blockers I see is how do you create the archive when you are running in a CI/CD pipeline, right? So in this particular scenario, I'm running the database on my local host and then creating the class archives. But in a CI/CD, you may not be able to connect to the database. So you don't get all of the classes into the archive, which is where I see one point of worry. And maybe that will not give you the full effectiveness of AppCDS. I'm not sure if everyone shares that, but I think definitely whether you are on the physical server or you're on the cloud, using AppCDS is going to give you a performance boost in terms of startup time and memory performances as well.
One more question. So can we do like, so I create a list in my dev environment and ship it with the container and then use it. Is that possible to do something like that?
That is, I mean, it depends. Like, so in each firm, the CI/CD policies are different. So at my firm, it's a completely isolated environment, the CI/CD environment. You start from scratch, you download your code, you build your code there, right? You run any tests that are needed. You then create an image for the container and then upload it into the container repo. And then when you run it on your cloud, that's when it gets pulled. So the CI/CD environment there is completely isolated. Each region, even the dev, UAT, and prods are all isolated. So in such scenarios, you may not be able to do this, or we'll have to see how you can build your Maven process such that it generates the archive at build time. But in the other places where it is a little more flexible, you should be able to do the same. You can run it in a dev environment, create the image, use that image across each of your environments. Ideally, that is what a container should be. You do it in in one environment, and it should be you can replicate that in all of the others. Okay. You could also maybe check it into your source code and then pull it into your image when you do the build. So that is also another mechanism that you can try.
Okay.
But one thing to note is when you use AppCDS, the class path that you've used to generate that particular archive, that has to remain the same when you run the application using this archive. So let's say when I first ran it, I used the -jar and target.jar file. So when you create, that is when you create the archive on the first step. That class path has to remain the same for every subsequent run. It can't change between runs. Otherwise, that AppCDS will get ignored. You will not see the benefit of AppCDS if your class path changes from each of the runs.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I've added some of these links here, which I can put on the chat for anyone who's interested. Or should I send this PDF for this presentation over, Satish?
Yes, it will be better. We will upload it and then we'll share the link.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's all.
I will take the concern further to the people, the developers of CDS and AppCDS, and let's see what they have to say about it.
Yes. Yes. That would be extremely helpful. Yes. I think especially when it comes to Spring Boot and all, AppCDS is very helpful. Spring Boot, there is a lot of so some of the things that I'm trying to optimize with Spring Boot is, one is the startup time, and two is the size of the images as well, because if your image size is big and you put it into a Lambda sort of infrastructure, you have to first download the image and then start running it. So those are the two things that I'm trying to optimize at my firm to see how we can better improve performances on the cloud.
Correct. A small experience. So if you are thinking of Lambda, stay. First of all, Java itself has that cold start, but forget about using. Always think about using framework like Spring. because they are made for runtime optimizations. So as much as possible, stay away from Spring. Use some alternatives like Dagger. This is just out of my experience.
Okay.
We actually migrated our Spring application into Dagger before we hosted to Lambda.
Okay. Dagger is a Google framework, right?
Yes, only difference is Dagger will do all the this DA in the compile time. So at the runtime, it will be just like, no, you just take it, put it, run it.
Correct, yes. Yeah, with Spring, that is the problem. You have everything is done at runtime. So I think, I subscribed to a lot of these Java forums, and one was about Micronaut, where Micronaut is supposed to be a compile time frame. So everything that, so it is easier to migrate from Spring to Micronaut.
Yes.
And in Micronaut, everything is compile time based. I think they also came up with the Micronaut data framework, where they do the mapping for the classes at compile time, so that when your application starts running, it is extremely fast.
Yes, I was coming to that. So similarly for our purpose, right? We started looking into Quarkus. I think it's similar to
Yes.
Micronaut, right? To reduce the startup time, basically.
Yes. I think Quarkus supports AppCDS out of the box. In Quarkus, you can get it to run with AppCDS, and it does the optimizations directly there.
Yes, but the thing with Quarkus is so we have a very age-old legacy application, right? So we have to rewrite most of the things because the jars are not supported in Quarkus, right? So when I saw this, I thought, okay, maybe this is something that we can do as a quick fix, right?
One of the articles that I read, one of these articles, it mentions like you have AOT frameworks, you have the GraalVM, which gives you AOT, but there are other features of the JVM which also helps improve your performance, and AppCDS is one of them, right? So you may not everything needs to be written in a GraalVM, and you could take advantage of AppCDS to improve your startup time.
Okay.
Yes, and many times people get confused with the startup time of GraalVM and AppCDS. So both are totally different. I mean, if you are discussing something like static compilers, right, like AOT and all, okay, they do the static optimizations and try to use that into the native image, whereas AppCDS is different. It's on loader side, right? It is making the archive of either it is a boot, trusted classes or application classes, right? So people should not get confused that, oh, that is also solving a startup time. Also, this is also solving. Both are totally different technically.
Yeah. I think with GraalVM, there are more applications, right? You can use it for your JavaScript frameworks also. It's a runtime for many other platforms as well as Java. So there are different use cases. Like Vaibhav said, you have AppCDS for runtime of your normal applications and GraalVM for other optimizations that are in.
Exactly. Right. So one of the static optimizer I can tell you is like, say like class hierarchy, right? So at the compile time only, you are very clear that is there any inheritance in the class or not? And if there is no inheritance, I know that the methods are not going to be the virtual methods, right? So it's not a polymorphic method. I can remove that with whatever monomorphic calls or something and can optimize things, right? So those kind of things are onto the Graal or static compiler or the dynamic compiler, whereas CDS is totally different. It is, as you explained, it is like saving all the classes into the archive, using the mmap, making it faster, different stuff.
Yeah. So this, I think what you are talking to are some of the basis for how records have been created in Java, right? Records are sealed classes. One of those. I don't actually.
Yes. That is right. So yes, with what I told you is onto the runtime, on the runtime and static time also. But yes, many people prefer to have it in the API, right? Like what you said, classes. So I really need some API which can do it for me, right? So it looks very cleaner on the API side, actually. So
Hmm.
JVM do the lot of dirty tricks at the backside, but if it is on the API side, it looks much cleaner actually. I
Yes.
agree.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll send this over, and I have my mail ID and contact details there. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me on my email.
Yeah. Satish, any last concerns, complaints, compliments? So I felt it very nice actually. This is the first time when I am hearing App Studios about someone non-Oracle actually, right? And I am very glad that people are using it. So thanks a lot.
Yes.
Great session, Arvind.
I hope it wasn't too much hands-on. All I was typing most of the time, but yeah, do let me know feedback. Do you think it was helpful? Do you think I went over the top with the demo or something else?
No, it was, I mean, more than that, I see that intention. So see, it's like this. Every time that we develop a software, we need to think like a user. You should see the application as a user. Similarly, every time you make an application to production, you should think from an operation side. So I see that it is just an intent that makes all this finding out app series and all this. So there's a lot of things like this actually. There's something called context switching, which is the OS level optimization. Also, you can optimize for JVM actually. So those kind of things you need to look at from the intent side. So I see the intent. That is what I appreciate more than the technicality. Good.
It was very nice session, and I had one small doubt. While creating a container, we are creating a container there. At the time of running only, we can create archive files, right? So we need to exit. Then container will stop, or how it will work? That I.
So what I see is in your build process before you do the container. There are two approaches. Okay, one is during your build. You build in such a hook that I showed right now in your Spring main, your Spring application class. You read for certain arguments, and if it is a certain argument, you exit immediately. After your whole context, you exit, right? So you can use that setup inside your Maven build. So as an extra step, maybe let's say pre-deployment or one of those steps, or after build, post build. You run this to create with the appropriate JVM flags to create the archive. So it gets built as part of your build process itself. And then so it is there in your CI/CD. It is there available in your folder. And then when you move on to the image creation, you can just copy this over. If it's a Docker image, you can copy it over at the time of image creation. So that's probably one approach you can use. The other is maybe when you do the Docker build itself, you have a multi-stage Docker build. At one of the stages is to run the application with the exit command so that it generates your files. And then in the second stage, you copy that file over along with any of your artifacts for deployment.
Okay.
So I think one thing that I didn't go over was, so we're talking about the latest JDK here, 17 and 18, where you have this in these two steps. But if this feature is also available before, it's available from JDK 10 onwards. So those folks who have not yet been able to go to the latest versions, there is still hope. It's a 3-stage process. So you have to first get the list, then generate the archive, and then start using. So the number of stages increases, but in a sense, the process remains the same. So you could also integrate that for JDK 10 onwards into your processes as well, and take advantage of AppCDS to improve your startup time.